Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is securing success, why IT leaders choose GIS Cloud Managed Services. My name is Jennifer LaRue. I'll be your logistics coordinator for today's session. Before we dive into the content for today's webinar, I just want to take care of a few housekeeping items to ensure a smooth hour with everyone here today. So if you do have some technical issues, if you for some reason can't hear me and you should be hearing me, we just ask that you try to refresh your browser, log back in, check your Zoom settings. And if you're still having some trouble, go ahead and utilize the chat and we'll see if we can get you some help. We also ask that this webinar is interactive. If you have any questions while we're going through today's presentation, feel free to leverage the chat. Also, as we're going through, if you have some questions that you want to capture in real time for our Q&A at the end of this webinar, there's also the Q&A tab in the toolbar of the Zoom. We will have a dedicated session and we will be tackling those questions at that time. But please feel free to submit at any point during the presentation. And today's webinar is being recorded. Don't worry if you missed something. We will make this available to all registered attendees, and we will send that out via follow-up email. All right, before we kick this off with our hosts today, I do want to do a quick poll. We always like to know who's joining us today. And where you are in this journey. We know the cloud journey is definitely a journey, and it could involve moving from on-premise to the cloud. It does take some planning. Obviously, we are here to talk about GIS Managed Cloud Services, and that's a part of the whole thing. So we know it's a journey. We just are curious, where are you in this journey, and where is the attendees today? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. It looks like we've got a lot of planners. We've got about 35% are really not quite there yet, or more in the planning phases. We have about the same that are already in the cloud. So that's really exciting. We kind of have a little bit of the gamut of those, a few that are in the short term and are ready, and some are still evaluating. So that is awesome. Great. Okay, so just remember, you got the chat, you've got the Q&A, and I will just, without further ado, hand this over to Alex to get started.
Hey, all right. Well, let's start with some introductions. So I've got myself here with you all today. I'm Alex Coleman, the CEO of RAC Technologies, and we also have Jason Harris.
Hello. I'm the CTO at RAC Technologies.
Yeah. Anyway, and thank you. We're really excited to have you all here today. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of who we are, RAC Technologies has been an Esri partner since 1997. Recently became a platinum partner with them. We also work really closely and are partners with AWS and Azure. And that is because we provide GIS Managed Cloud Services. So our sole focus here is, architecting out, migrating, and managing enterprise stacks in the cloud. So that is kind of why we really wanted to focus on this topic and have a really good conversation with the IT professionals about what we're seeing in this space. Just to give you a little bit more detail on what that looks like, just so you know where we're coming from, again, we manage, these stacks in the cloud. We also provide virtual desktop solutions, and in some cases, just provide the infrastructure. But, with the organizations, but we've worked with literally hundreds of organizations across the world at this point. So anything from small counties to really large, Fortune 100 companies. And because of that, we have really strong relationships with a variety, of IT departments that are servicing these organizations and kind of fighting that real struggle that everyone is these days. And it's, how do you manage, all of these complex softwares and keep your core together? So that is the gist of our conversation today, again, is really kind of focusing on that IT conversation. what we're seeing in the market, as we track these things, and kind of have some back and forth and understand, from your perspective too, hopefully, if you're seeing the same things and having the same challenges. So what that looks like is first, again, we're going to share some market trends. So obviously this managed service space is where we play. So we not only try and keep a pulse on our clients and what they're doing and our IT partners that we work with every day, but also the market in general. So, what are we seeing? What are we seeing in these departments? What types of moves to and or potentially at some point away from managed services? What does it look like? Then we'll take a look at, Jason's going to take you on a tour of what an enterprise stack actually looks like in the cloud. So from a small base deployment to a very complex, mature organization, what are you looking at when you make that move? And then to support that, we'll kind of dig into what managed services look like. So what should you expect when you're looking at an MSP as possibly a partner in your journey here? And whether that MSP is us or not is irrelevant. There are some good players in this space, right? It's just that to give you the opportunity to really think through the types of services that would give you a really good level of bandwidth. And then lastly, kind of leave you with a cautionary tale. So we're going to arm you with, in our experience in this space, what are the 5 things, if you're looking to partner with an MSP, you should absolutely ask them to make sure that you are aligned with the right partner that can serve you in the best way possible. So without further ado, let's take a look at what we're seeing in this space at large. So, again, obviously, we really keep our eyes on, a lot of the data and metrics that come out and surveys beyond just the organizations we serve. And a really good one recently came out by the S&P Global Intelligence Report. They actually had interviewed over 1,750 organizations from across verticals, so, both public and private sector, and asked, what does their spend look like, not just today, but in the future when it comes to managed services, and what type of services are you looking to utilize? And you can see it here, and it probably comes as no big surprise, but what's pretty incredible about that number is, all estimates on the table, you're looking at a spend that's over 400 billion by, the end of 2026. And in a variety of areas, from not just the infrastructure, but how are we managing that infrastructure? And then how are we also managing all of these crazy applications that are going into it? So the trend is definitely up. Again, no surprise as we're making these moves to the cloud, but it just kind of backs anyone's, idea or purpose when you need it and want to do it, you are not alone. This is something that's happening at a very global scale, and it's happening very quickly. And when they talk about managed services, here are some of the things that they include in that bucket. Again, probably not a big surprise here, but the top, 4 on this list are really about making sure that that infrastructure isn't going to go down, that there isn't a liability on your shoulders for any sort of a disaster scenario, that your most important applications are functional and running, right? So, again, probably not a big surprise here, but certainly, the trend speaks to truth. So it's a really great report. A lot of this we'll share with you, after the call. So if these are things that you need to have a conversation internally, you'll have access to links to the different resources we're going to look at. But I think it's a really important thing to note, again, that this is happening across the board. This is an absolute need out there. And why is it a need? To segue into this topic, IT needs to focus on core organization, right? There is a lot. I mean, these departments, almost every IT department we talk to, they are taxed, right? You have a core organization that has people doing crazy things with their email, or goodness knows, what's going on with all their hardware and what's going on with just the foundational software we use at our organization to function, right? That is a huge responsibility. And then you add into that all of these other pieces, right? Staffing, I think, is an issue for everyone. I don't know if we've talked to an organization out there that isn't facing some sort of staffing challenges, right? Whether it be a really great mind share that is set to retire, and trying to backfill that, or the great employment migration that happened with, and it kind of during and after COVID, right? There was a lot of shift of talent, and I think we very much are still feeling kind of the impacts of that, and then you just have the base liability of the ownership of, in many cases now, let's face it, keeping that organization running. IT keeps these organizations running because everything has some sort of web-based software, et cetera, component to it, right? And that is a huge liability, not to mention the fact that people are having fun trying to hack in and give you ransomware attacks and all these other terrible things, right? So there's all of this. And then on top of it, you have this complexity of software, right? You have certain pieces of software that fall out of that scope of the core that are very complex. Whether it be an ERP like SAP, whether it's Salesforce and whatever's going on with that, or you name it. And the Esri enterprise stack, when you have a really great GIS department that wants to do cool stuff, falls into that space, right? It is a different type of software. It is not your day-to-day core, organizational software. I will tell you that we here, right, all we specialize in is Esri. I said it before. We focus on the enterprise stack. That's all we do. Any of you out there who know GIS knows that enterprise stack, that GIS interfaces with a lot of other third-party applications, right? We do not manage any of those third-party apps. And there's a reason for that, because we have to be the master of our space, right? And the enterprise is complex. It can do a lot of fantastic things. And so we really want to own and specialize there. When you think about all those other big pieces of software, the level of knowledge and time and effort it would take to manage all of those at an expert level is almost unbelievable. Like you're thinking of like the jack of all trades, master of none at that point. And so, the offloading of those more kind of complex or out of the box or whatever you want to call, workloads, software applications, just seems like a no-brainer.
Alex, it's funny, like, so you mentioned that a lot of times there's lots of ancillary applications that come with GIS, right?
Yeah.
You can think of things like FME or CityWorks. So while, again, it's really important to say we are not CityWorks, right? We do not support CityWorks, or we're not experts in FME. We are experts in ArcGIS Enterprise. But there's a lot of times when you do need to have a CityWorks server, or you do need to have FME Workbench deployed. So, having that cloud specialty, we are able to actually spin up those machines to support the other pieces of that, may talk to your GIS and those integration points. So there's a lot of value there when choosing an IT provider, an MSP.
Absolutely. Very, very good point. So there's some really important whys here, or why we're seeing this happen. And it's not just, again, in the GIS space, it's in a lot of those more complex software spaces, where IT is saying, let us focus, let us do the best thing for this organization and keep it humming like a dream. And let's offload some of this software that is, we frankly, we don't want any part of. And when it comes to GIS, just like the managed services market, GIS is expanding. So these deployments of enterprise that we're seeing are growing and growing and growing. Not only is the market itself expanding because more organizations and verticals are using GIS, but it's because the ones that are, regardless of vertical, are expanding their use. GIS is truly ingrained in almost everything we do, whether you're a government organization, a utility, a transportation department, an architecture or an engineering firm. It is integral to your workflows, right? So we're seeing those workflows expand. We're seeing the enterprise stack grow and grow and grow. So again, with that comes the complexity of management and making sure that piece of software and all the workflows and data and everything to support it is running in the best way possible so the organization can be successful. So that's why we're seeing it kind of happening, and really looking at the trend, I think that it's just going to shift more and more in this direction. So with that kind of as a base to the conversation, I'd like to shift it over to Jason because he'd like to walk you through, what does an enterprise today look like in the cloud, depending on the size of your org?
That's right. So really, what does people keep talking, throwing that around? We're going to the cloud. My GIS is going in the cloud, and a lot of times people just sort of throw that around, not really realizing what a GIS in the cloud is actually going to look like. And really, the truth is the GIS that you work with every day, your servers, your content, your applications, your users, the short answer is it's going to look pretty much the same, but it's going to be a lot better. And we're kind of going to dive in a little bit on why it's going to be so much better. But really, it looks and functions just exactly like the same as if we were on premise. What we're looking at here is a pretty simple base deployment. But of course, they can grow and be much more complex systems like we'll see coming up. This is a much larger system. This is including a full development stage and production environment. We even have a direct connection that's back to the current on-prem system. Obviously, you see this is a much larger system. The point being here, though, is that these are really all servers. This is ArcGIS Enterprise, and it has all the other applications and integrations that you may or may not have now. But it's those same applications, it's those same servers. I know that I said that our GIS on-prem systems look very much the same as they do in the cloud. I did say better. So let's talk a little bit about why better. So better how? I'm going to quickly run through just some of the quick top advantages when you're comparing an on-premise GIS enterprise system to a cloud-based one. Let's just start with scale, and this is probably the easiest one for us to all kind of relate to. If you're running your GIS in-house, and let's say maybe it's down the hall or in the server room, or maybe even like a traditional data center, you're inherently going to have a very limited ability to scale. So consider this pretty typical scenario. You're in a multi-year hardware refresh schedule. So that means in the budget you get I don't know, whatever the amount of money is that you get allocated to purchase your servers, right? When you go to make that purchase in that first year, right? Let's say you have a 3 or 4 year refresh cycle. So you've got to pay for the servers on day one, but you have to plan for what your system is going to look like in year 2, year 3, year 4, and possibly year 5. Are you going to have enough hardware to roll out for your new products and services that are going to show up, right? Think about what your GIS looked like just a few years ago on premise, right? And think about how it has evolved since then. We started at a desktop application, right? Now we're portal, server, data store, geo event, imagery server. There's so many things. If you can imagine having to plan for that, all of that hardware on day one. And that happens to be why a lot of people are constrained these days, because they just don't have the hardware to actually support it. So you can see that a traditional on-premise GIS can have some pretty significant scaling issues to overcome. If this was a cloud system, all these points are essentially non-issues. Your cloud system can scale as needed for compute resources, if you need more storage, and you're not going to overpay. You're only going to pay for what you use and when you need it. I certainly do not want to pay for extra hardware that I'm going to need in the future if I was on an on-premise type of situation. I definitely do not want to pay for hardware that I purchased in year 1 that I'm going to need in year 5. Security, this is another big one. This is a huge thing to consider, and honestly, it's my firm belief that a cloud-based system is inherently more secure than their counterparts that run on-premise. And I know many of you will often hear the opposite of that. It's kind of a pervasive thought, and I think there can be a very clear demonstration that is not the case. A cloud environment provides some extremely fine-grained control. You have the ability to easily segregate these environments. Of course, you can do that on premise. You can apply all the different access policies, ensure all your traffic is encrypted in transit and at rest. You have all the firewall rules. This is all while utilizing an extremely robust logging services and security apparatus. You can literally see like every single change that has been made to your system, every packet, every rule that has changed, everybody accessing it. In short, everything that you have done on premise can also be done in the cloud, but most often I think it can be done better. You have a single pane of glass. You don't have any third-party appliances to deal with. There's no physical infiltration points. I know we've heard all about that. Phishing schemes, people dropping USB sticks out in the parking lot. That's not going to be an issue in the cloud because you can't just pop down the hall and drop a USB stick into the back of a server. Control. This is kind of along the same lines of security. A cloud-based system, really does provide you, like I said, the complete control over the entire environment from start to finish. This is all the GIS pieces. This is the enterprise, and this is also the IT. We're not dealing with all the intricacies, again, of all the physical hardware and the physical infrastructure per se. So we have control over all the networking, all the different resources, all the security, and all the IT facets of the system, as well as the enterprise piece. Now, this is particularly true if your system is managed by a third party. It's really nice to have that one single point of contact for all different aspects of your system. Productivity, this is the big one. And really, the productivity part is a byproduct of all of these different points. Now that your system has moved to the cloud, and all of those different benefits have become realized, your productivity, obviously, I hope you can see, is going to go up. You're going to have a modern system. You're going to have one that can scale. All of these things are going to make you more productive. And this leaves us with sort of the last quick bullet point, better collaboration. I think it's safe to say that you probably all would agree, hopefully, that the workplace has really changed forever since COVID, right? We've got some staff working in the office, some are working remote from home. Maybe some of you folks have different offices that are scattered throughout the state or the country, and actually some of our clients, the world. This is a typical scenario that I hear all the time. You've probably felt that pain of having to use a VPN to remote into another server at the office where the GIS enterprise is. And they're going to have to VPN in there and then do their work on ArcGIS Pro to do some edits. That is not the right way to do it. And I know all of you know that, but there are much, much better solutions, really. What we want to do is get everyone in the cloud in that same sort of virtual space, and everyone can work from that single environment, right? With a really robust, powerful VDI solution. That's where everybody can get in and work together. That is collaboration at its finest. Okay, I mean, really, really, what does your GIS look like in the cloud? Hopefully I just sort of kind of explained to you that it really does look very much the same as it would on premise, except we're going to get a whole bunch of extra benefits. You're going to have the option to design and migrate your system the right way. This is another typical scenario that we see a lot of. You don't want to deploy or migrate your existing system that's probably been upgraded 3 times since 10.7.1 on 4-year-old hardware, right? It's time to clean the closets out, right? You've got that opportunity right now. If you're considering that move to the cloud, take advantage of a well-architected framework. You get to do this whole thing over, and you can do it right, and you can build it with cloud-first technologies. This is going to, in the end, you're going to end up with a really, really much more performant. It's going to be very accessible, to all of your folks. It's going to be secure, resilient, and also, of course, very scalable. One that can expand or contract as your needs change. You can scale up during times of high traffic. You can scale back when things are not so busy. The object here is to pay for what you're using and not a single penny more. So really, that was just again, just a brief look at what your system will look like in the cloud compared to on-premise. Now I would like to talk, I'm going to pass it over to Alex. She's going to talk about managed services, which arguably I think are really the most important piece of this puzzle. So Alex,
Yeah,
take it away.
that's good. Yeah, and I think really, Jason, like what you showed, that's the dream, right? That all of that functionality and capability comes to light. And this is really, the next part is really just to give you an idea of what managed services are, what should be accessible to you. And again, this isn't just by us. We're not the only player in this space, right? This is more just to give you a general sense of what you can look for when you're out there. If you know that you want to offload this work to be more productive, at your organization, what do you want, or what can you find in this space? And there's two really sides to the story, right? In a lot of cases, but starting with, there's getting there, right? There's getting to the cloud, and then there's the management side. So starting on the getting there piece, you know, this probably comes as no surprise and seems pretty vanilla or simplistic to say to start. But you know, the first thing you want to do is assess and plan, right? But it really benefits you to find a partner in that has the competency, because there are a lot of moving parts with GIS. There are potentially a lot of integration points and a lot of gotchas that, you know, if you find an MSP that has done this before, that has that GIS competency, they're going to know what to look for. And they should help you really, you know, again, look under the hood and decide, okay, what architecture, how are we going to make the best house for you in this cloud environment that's going to serve you today, but as Jason mentioned in his talk just a second ago, is also going to be scalable for the future, right? There is a lot of ways you can architect an enterprise system in a cloud that aren't scalable.
There's
So
way more that can there's way more systems that can be deployed poorly too, Alex. I think
that's
that's a
right.
big one. There's
Yeah,
lots of bad ways to do this, but there's also, there's good ways.
indeed. So it's never a bad thing, you know, even if that's all you need is that additional help. It's never a bad thing to, you know, to have that partner with you in the beginning. They can help also with budgeting, making sure you're on the right machine types. You know, some machine types, depending on which cloud you're looking at, right, might look really sexy and better than others, and they're really not needed. On the flip side, you know, you may need to put some juice where you didn't expect, right? So that assess and planning part is really important. And then, of course, obvious next step, you know what you need, and now you're going to configure it in the cloud. This again is where MSPs can step up. They can understand your security posture. They can understand what your third-party integration points are. You know, all sorts of fun goes into this. It sounds like a quick 2 bullets. Let's deploy the VMs and let's install and configure the enterprise. But really, within that one within that one section are a lot of these fun little details that, again, if you've done it time and time again, you know what they are. You can knock them out, and they can do those things for you, which is a good thing. Then obviously migration. So now your house is built, you've got your, you know, your enterprise installed and configured. Now you're moving in. This is one of those things that if you're thinking about moving to the cloud, if you know it's even a year out, let's say, or 2 years for that matter, and Jason mentioned this earlier, cleaning the closets is a big thing. If you're a mature GIS organization, you know, you've got some stuff that you just start going in and clearing. It's like, what are we really using? What's just sitting here that's been it's sitting there for gosh knows how long, you know, and just start flushing it. Just know that you're, or identifying it, tagging it, know that you're not going to take it with you. Because one, it will allow you to design your cloud environment, you know, potentially with some less juice because you're not taking everything in the kitchen sink with you. But also it gives you an opportunity to really start fresh, you know, to start with only those pieces that you want. and that you want to take. And it feels good. It's really kind of like a spring cleaning, right? But again, that's something that when you're working with an MSP, they can talk to you about, cleaning those closets. They can work with you to identify, okay, what are you going to take? Let's make sure you're architected right? You're configured right. And then let's help you move all of that content into the new house. They're like the movers that come in and they pack up your stuff and they take it to the new place and get it all going and running, going through QA. Depending on the size of your org, that could be a really big lift or it could be a very simple one. But again, something to recognize and something that you can get assistance with. And it's usually the piece that everybody definitely finds assistance with if they're moving anything, I would say. Right, Jay?
Very true.
Yeah. And then once you're there, then it's the management. So now, you've partnered with an MSP, they've kind of worked with you along the way, they've got you in the cloud, you're running great. Now, how are people leveraging these orgs once they're there? And it's two main buckets. Again, probably not a big surprise here, but you've got your infrastructure management that can go along with managed cloud services, and you've got your software management. Right on the infrastructure side, things like monitoring the machines, the service level agreements. So, ensuring that your infrastructure does not go down. Most of these organizations are going to have some sort of SLA that gives you that peace of mind as an IT professional to know that that stack is going to be stable. That when, a crazy event occurs, and let's say, for example, and you've got an evac map sitting on a web service out there and it's getting hammered, guess what? Your service is going to stay up. Like you've got people back there really watching and caring for that environment for you. They're also doing things like OS updates, backup and retention, which is huge part of the story. I can't tell you how many organizations we've talked to that don't even have a real backup and retention policy, like just a standard across the board. And with things like ransomware, I mean, probably and Jason probably can say this better, but probably the best way to protect yourself against a catastrophic incident of any sort or any, a third party, nefarious creature coming in and trying to invade your system is to have a very strong, consistent backup and retention policy.
Yeah, the thing there is all of those things that can go wrong. Your system can go down.
Yeah.
It can be, crypto locker, everything. All of those situations are out there, and the best way to protect yourself against that is to assume that it will happen, right?
Yeah.
You have to assume that that is going to happen, and you prepare and design and you build your systems as such that you can recover from one of these really terrible situations, right? Knock on wood, it's never happened. Knock on wood again, we hope it never happens. But the best way to prepare for something like that is to assume that it will happen. That's it. Just assume it's
Absolutely.
going to happen and prepare as such.
Indeed. So, and it's a big liability point that we keep hearing more and more in that space. And when you think about the shift to managed services for some of these complex pieces, it's like, I don't want to be the one on the hook for when that happens and getting us back up and running. So that's where the MSP would step in and take over that, and have that shoulder that responsibility for the organization. So the infrastructure side is super important. However, and this is true, though most organizations, at least those that we work with, opt to have both managed, sometimes they're like, nah, we got the infrastructure. We just want you to manage the software. So that is kind of this right side of the screen. And in and of itself, a whole different piece of the puzzle. So this is where, you're upgrading the Esri stack. I mean, and make no mistake, when you get in the cloud and you've got the right architecture behind you, and especially if, excuse me, if you've got the right architecture behind you, your GIS will grow. Like when your handcuffs come off and you can do cool stuff, it's going to grow. So you're going to want to be upgrading. You're going to be wanting to potentially install new parts of the software. Like, hey, I want to add image server or XYZ capability. I mean, that's just the facts of it, right? So on an MSP front, they should be there to make sure all of that's happening. So as an IT department, you're focusing on the core, again, the core of your organization. your MSP is over here dealing with the, hey, yeah, 11.3 just came out. Guess what? That MSP is the one that's doing that upgrade. You don't even have to worry about it. And then the patches that come out, I think anybody who's played in this space for a while know that patches in this space, you got to test them. You've got to make sure that they're not going to bring anything down. Sometimes you put it in and you got to roll back. So, it's not as easy as, yay, let's just push this button and install a patch. So again, the MSP is handling all of that piece of the puzzle. And then really, fundamentally at the base of it, just the day-to-day troubleshooting. Things can come up. And I will say, as long as we've been doing this, and with the team that at least I know we have, and the talent that's out there in the GIS ecosystem for that matter, managing the enterprise, things are going to come up that are going to be head scratchers. I mean, we still get them, and everybody goes, "Huh, what in the world is going on here?" And it might take a minute, right? Or you identify a bug, whatever have you. That stuff is taken off the plate of the org and it's put on the MSP, let them deal with it and go down those rabbit holes and figure it out while you guys can stay on the productivity train. So that's, those are the big pieces that, as an when you're looking for an MSP, you should look for, because it'll take a lot of weight off the org overall. And not just IT, your GIS department will love you as well, especially on the right side.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because for such a long time now, the IT folks and the Esri folks, the GIS people, they've been asking each other for these new things, and IT doesn't really understand why they want 5 new servers, and GIS maybe doesn't understand how to explain to IT why they need those 5 servers.
Yeah.
So the goal of an MSP is you're looking for expertise in that IT and infrastructure piece, and you're looking for expertise in the Esri ecosystem. And ideally, you're looking for those ones that can overlap and do both of those things, in nothing but the best way, right?
100%.
The goal of an MSP should be, and I want all the Esri people to put on earmuffs if they can hear me now, but the goal for both for the MSP, for both the IT folks and on the GIS folks, is to keep you guys, the infrastructure team and the GIS folks, out of the Esri rabbit hole, not spending your entire day trying to track down what is wrong with this map service, or what's wrong with that spatial index, or should I have this server right sized or allocate more RAM? That's not the stuff that you guys want to be doing, right? That's what a good MSP should be doing for you.
100%. Well said, sir. And on that front, for those of you that are looking for an MSP, now here's where we're going to talk about what you should ask. And I will tell you this, and again, there's a lot of folks in this space. So these are just from our experience, seeing folks, in some cases, taking folks over from certain situations, etc. Just from what we've seen out in the world, there are at least 5, but these 5 are the most important questions that if you're looking to make the move and you're looking to have a partnership, you should absolutely ask, and the whys. So the first and foremost thing we would just, as a cautionary tale, make sure that you ask is, do they have both GIS and cloud experience? I think this is pretty obvious, but super important, because in that, in the big managed cloud services space, there are a ton of players. But when you think of the ones, when you narrow it down to those that actually have that GIS competency, that truly have it, we're not talking about that many. And this is a marriage of talent, without a doubt. You can't have one without the other and have this thing sing. One side's going to be not where you want it to be, for sure. So I think the easiest way to look for those things, and if you're in the search, is ensure, do they have the Esri and the cloud certifications, and are they partners, and if so, at what level? Because we know from experience, it takes a lot to get those partnerships. It takes a lot to get those certifications. You can't really fake your way through it. So it's a very safe thing. And just so you know, so that I'm not trying to feed the well or anything. We are not the only GIS MSP that has certs and that has these partnerships, right? So as you're looking, you'll see there's a good little group. There's a good group there but I would definitely stick to those folks, right? To really make sure that they've got those competencies. It's super important. Um, the other piece, and this is really, really important. I don't know which is most important, but this might be the one, or might be one of them anyway.
They're all pretty important.
Yeah, I know. Make sure that you understand what will happen to your environment if and when you ever wanted to leave the agreement. And what I mean by that is, do you get your account? Or do you then have to migrate out and build a brand new account? Do you get your data? We've seen a variety of ways people can potentially be trapped in a situation when contractually they want to leave. So I would absolutely make sure that you know the exit strategy, and hopefully you'll never have to leave. Hopefully wherever you go, it's the happiest place you've ever been and you're super excited about that. But let's just imagine, who knows why, you're going to leave the organization. You've got to know that you can take what you have and what you own with you, and that there's no fee, et cetera. So just really look at it. We're going to be putting out a lot more content around this because it's one of those hazards that I just think when I think, well, of these caution signs, like that's what I just want to put up in front of everybody. Like, please ask about this. Please ask about this. So we're going to expand on that topic because there's a lot to unpack there. But if you want to know more about that one specifically, if you just want to know, hey, what do you mean? What else should I be looking for? Please shoot us an email or whatever. I'll give you a whole list of things. And we will be putting out further content on that one as well. But again, have it in writing. Make sure that you can take your stuff with you and your account with you, and you don't have to start from scratch. Very, very important. The other piece is make sure you know what's actually included in the managed services. This is, yeah, see, they're all really important. I want to be like, this is also very important, but it is, because there are if you get a managed service agreement and someone's saying, yeah, for whatever, $500 a month, we're going to manage everything. It's like, are you really? Like, are upgrades included? I'm telling you, there are things that take the time, right? There are things that take time and take effort. And it's things like upgrades. Are they doing all your patches and updates? What if you want to add new software, right? What about the day-to-day troubleshooting? You know, those are the things that if you end up in a billable hour scenario can really add up. So you might, on the one hand, think that you're getting managed services, and then on the tail end realize that you're actually paying. You're going to have to keep pay for managed services. So, and that may be okay. That may be all you need. I'm just saying, be super certain that what is covered is what you need, and nothing slipping through the cracks, because that's just, you don't want to be caught unawares.
And that you should, Alex, also another important part of that, and we're talking about the managed services part, but it's also important to think about your cloud spend in general.
Yes.
So if your managed service provider is taking care of all that, that you're not getting dinged for, extra storage or, data transfer in and out. Those are all things that, should be calculated and shown to you up front. Now, we definitely understand that the cloud can vary. We can go up and down, a little bit here, a little bit there, with your spend, but that should, you should be able to get a very, very good, and if you're really good, you get the exact number, what it's going to be every single month, regardless. That's really important too.
Absolutely. Budgets are important, right? It can't be fluctuating all over the place every time something happens. So yeah, that's a big one. And then the last two really kind of go hand in hand. So, how long have they been a GIS MSP? Again, there's some strong players in the space that have been doing it for a long time, that I know that are great, right? It's really important to just know that, because there are a lot of newcomers too. You saw the trend, right? There's a trend towards managed services. Well, what happens when there's a trend? People want to be able to offer those services, which is great, right? But it's just good to know that, you just want to know your partner, make sure that they have the skill set that you need for your organization, and always check references. And and when I say check references, I mean, call them. Like, if you're anything like me, back, check references, I'd get some, and I'd look at them, and I would never do it. I'd be like, oh, it looks good. They obviously have somebody that I can talk to. But I think in this case, it's really important to actually speak with them. And, we're a small community. It's in terms of like the GIS community. So, I mean, I would even try calling some of your, organizations that you know well from maybe the conferences or whatever, and just ask around and do reference checks that way. I think it's really important and a really good way to know, who's the right partner for you. So those are our cautionary tales. Again, we're really going to be fleshing out this topic because we get a lot of questions around this as we talk to folks, and we realize that there's kind of that need. And it's always funny talking about something like this because you don't want people to think that you're trying to lead them down a trail. But these are just truly the things that we've seen, and so we're just trying to relay that to y'all so you make the right decisions. All right, in addition to that, we are going to, in the follow-up content that you will get, we are going to provide access to some links for tools you can use. So for those of you that are making the move to the cloud, if you want to hear, some stories of organizations that have made the journey, one of the links on here I think you might find really helpful if you're trying to make a financial case for moving to the cloud. And that's basically our return on investment template. So it's the opportunity for you to enter your on-premise numbers, both quantify and qualify your on-premise spend, and then compare that to what your costs would be in the cloud. And for folks that aren't used to generally making financial presentations through your organization, which can happen a lot, it's a tool you can certainly utilize. So without further ado, that is it for us. I think we are on to questions. We're inviting Jen, our lovely Jen LaRue, back in the house.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's time for questions. Thank you so much, Alex and Jason. We've already got a few questions coming in, but here's your time. If you do have a question, please feel free to put it into the Q&A or into the chat, and we will add it to the list. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a few coming in. I think that we'll start with this one. An attendee who I think it's important to say is from a small organization, gets a variety of reports from other small organizations around the experience of Arc Pro and whether there's acceptable performance, or in some situations hearing that there's some that it's a bit slow, and that's largely centered around GPU requirements. Is this something that we want to talk about?
I would love to talk about this. This is
Yeah.
one of my favorite topics. It really is. Okay, I'll try to make this short, but I could go literally an hour on this one topic. Okay, yes, ArcGIS Pro needs a GPU. There's no quick way around that. To open up ArcGIS Pro and use it in any kind of effective way, you need to have a GPU, right? So the question is, how do you use ArcGIS Pro? If your stack, everything else is sitting in the cloud, and your Arc Pro is sitting on premise, right? You need to do is have a virtual desktop, a VDI solution, and I talked a little bit about that in the presentation. But what you need to do is essentially get a VDI workspace. So that VDI workspace, which absolutely 100% has to have a GPU, right, in order for ArcGIS Pro to function. That VDI workspace will sit next to the rest of your ArcGIS Enterprise stack. So we don't want any latency between those two applications, like ArcGIS Pro and, let's just say, for example, your SDE, your backend SQL Server. Now, the goal here is to only have those relatively expensive GPU accelerated workspaces. We want to reserve those for the power users, right? These are for the people that are doing edits directly into the enterprise geodatabase. These are the ones that are doing the administrative tasks, really the power users. The goal is for those folks to take your authoritative data, your ArcGIS enterprise data, and publish that into the portal, right? So that they're available as feature services to the rest of the organization. And they don't need those, again, relatively more expensive GPUs, GPU accelerated workspaces. But yes, make no question about it. You can't just remote into a file server and open up ArcGIS Pro in the cloud. It will not function right. End of story. So that's the goal. So you open up ArcGIS Pro locally outside of that cloud environment, and that's where folks can open up and utilize those feature services. They act, they perform. You can edit all the normal stuff that you normally can, except that they're really fast and you don't have that latency, the chatter back and forth to the enterprise geodatabase.
Nice.
Whew. I tried to do that as fast.
I think you did great. Yeah, no, that was good. That was succinct, yeah.
But if anybody ever wants to talk more about that, just seriously email me. I'd sadly love to talk about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I think the other, another question coming in is, could you talk a little bit about our experience with some of our clients or organizations that have GIS that falls within IT versus outside of IT? Just a little bit about that relationship. I think we've got a couple of attendees who are curious to hear more.
That's really, it's kind of funny because there are some organizations that have IT and GIS is embedded in IT.
Yeah.
There's other places where they
Totally separate.
totally separate, where GIS has probably been around a much longer time, is when they're separate, because GIS was not an IT centric department. It just never used to be historically like that. Places now that you see GIS and IT kind of under the same roof, so to speak, those are probably folks that have adopted GIS a little bit later, right? They realize how important that IT and GIS are to each other. So that's, I mean, those are just two totally different kind of models that we see. Lots of stuff in between, but I'd say historically speaking, GIS did not know what to ask of IT to help them. IT always wanted to know why are these GIS map people asking me for 10 more servers? The IT folks probably don't know how to support a proper backup of the ArcGIS Enterprise system. Same time, the GIS folks probably don't know how to ask IT to help them make a proper backup of the enterprise system. I don't know if that was really the big question, but yeah, we do see totally different dynamics on where GIS lies on that scale.
And it's interesting because if this is the move you're considering, and again, an MSP will cull this out of you as well, because most times, if the move is chosen to go to the cloud, and whether you're gonna do it on your own or with a managed cloud service provider, either way, there's gonna have to be some cooperation there, right? I can't think of one that we have a deployment we've done where, if they weren't in the same department, where we didn't have to, in some cases, work with IT, because there are just some things you're going to need from that group. So it's important that, they're all at the table, and, sometimes that hopefully it's a good relationship. If not, hopefully it's the start of a better one when we all get together.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think I'm going to hand this question over to Jason. Not unsurprising to, I think, all of us here. There are several questions coming in around security. And I know, Jason, you touched on that a bit in the presentation. But I do think that, some of the questions are just like, what does what does security look like? And, you mentioned, and you kind of put yourself out there by saying that you believe that it's definitely more secure, but could you add any additional color to what you've already touched on there?
Yeah, I can. So the big cloud platforms like AWS or Azure or GCP or some others, part of their service offering is centered around securing your stack, right? All those things like those firewall appliances that we used to have to purchase, or all the different routers. Did you, if you're on premise, did you patch the router? Is it vulnerable to, X, Y, and Z takeover from the Chinese government that was, discovered not all that long ago? When you're in a cloud environment, you've got that really, really fine-grained control, right? You can see every packet that is passing through your system, all the egress, all the ingress, all those tools. Like I said, those cloud, these big, mega cloud providers, part of their job is to provide you with these types of, security and logging tools that to pretty much set them apart from, the other person, or make you not want to be on premise because you don't have to manage all of those extra things, and you can see it all in one place. And again, no matter which way you go, if you want to stay on premise or if you want to go to the cloud, or there's a mix of both. Honestly, the most important piece of that is to have the right person in there to make sure that these security policies, these rules, are actually set up, enforced, and properly deployed. Right? We all know that bad IT, or not bad IT, but bad security can really hamper somebody's ability to be productive. Right? We don't want that. That's too much, and we don't want too little to let people go willy-nilly and public share all their data. Right? But the striking that balance, having that again, I keep saying single pane of glass, but that one place that you can go look and who logged in, who made this change, who sized this drive, what IP is this coming from? Who is making that request? How can I block them? All of that in one spot is so important, and it makes life so much easier versus, again, dealing with on-premise mishmash of different hardware and things like that. I hope that answered a little bit.
Well, we also have another question around, where are we seeing people leaning, at least from our clients, between AWS and Azure or other cloud providers? Like, what does that breakdown look like?
Well, I mean, for us, it's an easy one. I know that off the top of my head. So AWS, we're about 70%, Azure about 30, roughly, give or take.
And they both have their strengths and weaknesses. We have certain preferences. Some, one has been around a lot longer than another, but the other one may have certain other good things about it. But they're yeah, you're right. That's it. Nothing more to say about that one. But
again, it's we sit there and we figure out what's going to work right for each client, but that's kind of how things are sitting today.
That's just how they shook out.
Yeah, that's actually what I should have said, Jen. I should have said that. It's all dependent on the client, which is very true. That's something we don't have like a one size fits all, like, here you go, you're a small or you're a large or whatever. Every person that we deploy, every organization is different. Take them on a case by case basis, and design the system accordingly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. There was a lot more questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite get to all of them today. We will do our best to put together some answers to the questions that we didn't get to, and send out with our slides and a recording to this presentation afterwards. So if you submitted a question and it wasn't able to be answered today, please take a look at the email coming your way for some more answers to additional questions. So this would conclude our webinar for today. I am going to put up a quick question where we just want to ask you, like, what do you want to hear from us, right? If there's something that you want us to talk about, you spent an hour with us today, and we are really, really appreciative of that. If you